From the Mixed-Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler by E.L. Konigsburg. Claudia knew she could never pull off the old-fashioned kind of running away. 12-year-old Claudia was too sensible. When she thinks about running away, she doesn't want to be cold or dirty or hungry. When she thinks about running away, she doesn't want to be uncomfortable in any way. So Claudia does what any sensible girl would do. She plans everything down to the very last detail. She saves her allowance for weeks and enlists Jamie, her 9-year-old brother, to join her. They make the perfect team, she decides. She is cautious and poor, and he is adventurous and rich. He has, after all, saved $24. Claudia's plan involves running away to the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City, where they can enjoy running away in style. Once they figure out how to avoid the guards, Claudia and Jamie sleep in enormous antique beds, take baths in the huge fountain, and spend their days exploring all the exhibits. When the museum gets a new angel statue that may or may not be a real Michelangelo, Claudia becomes obsessed with discovering its origins. Is it really a Michelangelo, or is it a fraud? Their investigation leads them to the statue's previous owner, Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler. Mrs. Frankweiler, it turns out, has a file on everything she has ever owned and on everyone she has ever met. There are just two problems. One, Mrs. Frankweiler is very old, so she has owned a lot of things and has met a lot of people. And two, she has her very own mixed up and peculiar filing system. Can Claudia and Jamie figure out Mrs. Frankweiler's filing system and find the answer before their adventure ends? I'll have to find out. And from the Mixed-Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler by E.L. Konigsburg.
That was good. No, I don't have any questions. You covered up everything.
The next book we're going to talk about is Ghost Boys by Jewell Parker Rhodes. 12-year-old Jerome Rogers is always reminded that he needs to be careful. His ma reminds him, his grandma reminds him. They remind him every morning before he walks the 8 blocks to school with his younger sister Kim. In Chicago, you can pass an awful lot of out-of-work men playing cards, abandoned lots, and drug dealers in 8 blocks. And Jerome knows it's not about where you walk, it's about how you walk. You don't want to walk too fast like you're running, and you don't want to walk too slow like you're daring someone to stop you. Jerome has learned to navigate the 8 blocks to school, and it's not the drug dealers that he's worried about the most. It's the bullies, particularly Mike, Eddie, and Snap. They are relentless. They force Jerome to stay near adults, to hide in the supply closet, and to eat lunch in the bathroom. When the new kid Carlos comes to school, Jerome finally has an ally and a friend. But when Carlos brings a toy gun to school and offers to let Jerome play with it, Jerome is not sure. He knows he is not supposed to play with guns, even toy ones. But Jerome is tired of always doing the safe thing. He just wants to be a kid for once. He wants to pretend to be a hero for a change. Or better yet, an actor who plays a hero in a movie. He takes the toy and is playing with it in an abandoned lot after school when he is shot and killed. Now Jerome is a ghost, surrounded by other ghost boys like himself. He can see his family, but he can't communicate with them. Only one living person can see and hear him, Sarah, the daughter of the police officer who shot and killed him. Jerome struggles to understand why he is still here and why the only person he can talk to is the last person he wants to. That's Ghost Boys by Jewell Parker Rhodes.
I have one question.
Yes.
Did this really happen in real life?
No, this is a pretend story. Well,
So it's
it has happened. But this story is not the story of that. Although it is mentioned in there. So, okay. The Apprentice Witch. This didn't happen in real life either.
Oh, I know by the caption or the title.
You know by the rabbit floating in the moon? Okay. So, Ariadne Gribble is afraid she's never going to be a full-fledged witch. She has failed her witch test in front of everyone, including her grandmother, who is a very powerful witch, and her rival, the beautiful and perfect Jen. But there is a dire need for witches throughout the country, and Ariadne is assigned to town anyway, but only as an apprentice. Unfortunately, it is the small, remote town of Lowell, where nothing is likely to happen, and Ariadne will probably never learn to be a real witch. That's what she thinks. But when she arrives in Lowell, she quickly discovers that life is not as uneventful as she thought. She has to deal with a creeper and a nest of snotlings. Not to mention a dangerous hex infestation. All while trying to fit in, make friends, and figure out why she keeps seeing this mysterious glyph. Just when Ariadne thinks she's starting to fit into Lowell, and just as she's getting a handle on her magic, her rival arrives in town, and things are about to get a whole lot more complicated and dangerous. Can Ariadne keep Lowell safe? And is Lowell the test that will allow her to show her real skills as a witch? Find out in The Apprentice Witch, a not real story. So 12-year-old Willow lives in Alaska with her family and their sled dogs. She wants to blend in, but she also wants to be seen. She wants her parents to see that she is not a child anymore. She has been helping her dad as long as she can remember with their dogs, and she knows all about the dogs and their unique personalities. Magoo is fun, but not very experienced, kind of like Oso. Cora is... Oh my gosh, how appropriate! Cora is older, and she can calm the other dogs around her. And Prince can be hard to handle. Roxy? Well, Roxy is smart and fast, and Roxy thinks just like Willow. Roxy is a leader. Willow thinks that she's ready for a solo trip, and there's 12 miles between her house and her grandparents' house. So she wants to convince her parents that she's ready to make that trip. And when she does convince her parents, she sets out on her journey with Roxy in the lead. But when tragedy strikes, Willow realizes that one mistake can have frightening consequences. With the help of some surprising friends, Willow learns that growing up is not always about doing things alone. Growing up can be just as much about learning to depend on others. And that's Diamond Willow by Helen Frost. So one of the fun things about this book is that it has secret messages in the middle of them.
I have a question.
And a diamond shape.
Yes, and the diamond shape, which is like a diamond willow.
Question.
Yes.
Is Is it fiction or nonfiction?
Well, this is fiction. These are all fiction, but I think this author is from Alaska. Yeah. Well, she lived in Alaska for 7 years, and it's kind of based on like Native Alaskan people.
So it's not fiction.
No, it's fiction. So fiction are made up stories, but made up stories can still be based on true life, right?
Now I understand.
Yeah. Next one. Hatchet by Gary Paulsen. Do you know this book?
Yes, I do.
Okay. You have to tell me how I do on this.
I read it.
My head is pounding.
You need a head massage.
I am lying on the ground, my face pressed into the sand, and my pant legs wet with lake water. I don't think I have amnesia. I know my name. It's Brian Robeson, and I'm 13 years old. The rest comes to me slowly, and when it does, part of me wishes that I could forget. My parents have gotten divorced, and I know a secret. The secret is about my mother and a man in a car. The secret is the reason for the divorce, and the reason I am in the predicament I am right now. After the divorce, my dad went to work in the oil fields in Canada, and the only time I get to see him is in the summer. The only way to get to the Canadian wilderness from my house in New York City is by bush plane. Actually, I don't think I live in New York City. My amnesia must be coming in. I might just live in New York. In any case, the plane I was in was a Cessna 406, which had room only for the pilot and me and our gear. I know that nobody could have predicted that the pilot would have a heart attack and die mid-flight, but part of me can't help thinking that I wouldn't be here if it weren't for that secret. I sit up and assess the landscape around me. I am surrounded by trees and a rock face. The lake before me is L-shaped, and I know somewhere in it lies the Cessna 406 and the pilot. I assess myself as well. My head is still pounding, and when I reach up, there's a knot on my forehead. My windbreaker is torn, but my shoes and jeans are intact. I pat myself gently, searching for broken bones, and when I reached my hip, I found it, attached to my belt, the hatchet. It's Hatchet by Gary Paulsen. Yes.
When I read the book, I don't know if it was the same book, but something was wrong with the planes that also, went down, and the pilot had a heart attack. So then something was wrong with the plane. I don't know the book before that.
Well, after he had a heart attack, he ran out of fuel, right?
Yeah. So that was wrong with the plane.
Here's something interesting. So the teacher for this class told me that she knows the guy who wrote this book, and that some of it is based on his experiences in real life.
That was my next question, too.
I knew you were going to ask, because you've been asking a lot of those questions. Okay.
Last one?
The last book I'm going to tell you about. This book is called Homecoming, and it's by Cynthia Voigt. It is a lot of responsibility taking care of a family when you're only 13 years old and on your own in a hostile world. But that is just what Dicey Tellerman is forced to do when her mother leaves her alone with her 3 younger siblings and never returns. Dicey knows one thing. She has to keep them together. The rest she has to figure out along the way. That means that she can't go to the police because they will try to split them up. And the only relative that Dicey knows of is their great Aunt Scylla, and she lives miles and miles from where their mother left them in the parking lot at a shopping mall. Dicey does not have enough money for bus fare, so she decides the only thing they can do is walk. Dicey finds it isn't easy or fast. They have to stay out of sight of adults, and they are hungry and running out of money. She also has to contend with 3 hungry, stubborn, tired, and whining children. Dicey isn't sure if she is up to all this responsibility, but she doesn't really have much choice, and she definitely can't let her younger brothers and sister know that she has doubts. Will Dicey be able to get her family to Great Aunt Scylla's? If they make it there, will the Tillerman children find someone they can trust to take care of them? Find out in Homecoming by Cynthia Voigt.